Hi, everyone. You should be able to see me. This is Tim Sarrantonio, founder of the Generosity Spectrum. Um, if you are watching this live, would love to just get a confirmation of who's in the chat. A little bit of who you are, where you're calling in from would be great. I am not in my usual abode. I am in National Harbor, just outside of Washington, D.C. So we have a lot of launch week activities being planned for the Generosity Roundtable, a lot of them happening at the Bridge Conference. So I'm doing this as kind of like a little bit of a what is going on, how did this come to be, and I'm going to do a little bit of show and tell as well. Hey Ashley, good to see you. Um, hey, awesome, awesome, awesome. We got people coming in. I'm really excited about that. So thanks to have you. Pon's officially one of the first people actually part of the network, which is very exciting. So I'm very, very thrilled to hear that. Hi, TJ. So again, we're gonna, the typical generosity roundtable session takes about 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. So we're gonna commit to that in terms of today. I want this to be informational. It's the start of a lot more that we're going to be learning together. So what I'm going to do is just kind of organize this to say, where did this come from? What are we mainly trying to learn together? And then how are we going to do that using the Generosity Roundtable? And where are we going next? That's it. I'm going to take this recording. I'm going to put it up online later today or tomorrow. And then we're going to have a really good handle on where we're going by next week. So, again, if you're just joining us, my name's Tim Sarrantonio. I'm founder of the Generosity Spectrum, which is an educational gaming studio based in upstate New York, specifically for nonprofit leaders, boards, and the communities that they serve. So I say we, it's me. We're going to be designing games to specifically help nonprofit professionals, boards, and the communities that they serve. A lot of this came from my own experience in the sector. I currently serve as the chair of the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. So if you are at Bridge, let me know in the chat. That would be cool so I can come find you. But if you're not there, we are also having a pretty cool session for the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which is the largest analysis of individual giving data in the world. I'm chair of that. And so that's going to be a Thursday panel. Pretty excited about that. In fact, FEP was one of the first group sessions that we tested the Generosity Roundtable at. So I started in the nonprofit sector, like many of you, not formally trained. The majority of people don't come in to the social good space either directly for working for a nonprofit, doing services, consulting, designing products and services that support those folks. Maybe it's a side part of the industry, such as corporate social responsibility, living inside a for-profit entity. I've had experience with all those different types of things. And through the work of the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, as well as the Alliance for Social Trust at the Aspen Institute, I have been studying bottom up trust for the past year as well. And one of the phrases that I fell in love with, if you're trying to get a handle on what this is that the vast majority of the decisions that we make in our sector are driven by what I think would be called uh, practice-based evidence, or evidence-based practice, excuse me, meaning you're going to look at a benchmark and then you're going to try to figure out what to do. So evidence-based practice, right? Kind of in that order. We look at a thing and then we decide to do a thing with it. And what I think we're starting to see, especially in a world being driven by artificial intelligence and things like that, is a real love and reconnection with that actual work happening and actual work driving that. Again, I don't want this to be a lecture, so if you want to also share your thoughts on if you're seeing these types of things in your own work, would love to hear that. But practice-based evidence is something that we see in other sectors, right? The healthcare sector, for instance, is a kind of a wash with this, where it's people, they're going to test things, they're going to try things in a controlled environment before they start to kind of roll everything out to a lot of different people. And for years, because I worked at a technology company, I would just kind of go, look, we can have a role here. We can give people this space to do these types of things. But the practical reality is that there isn't really a space to talk about generosity, identity, trust, in a way that's not going to immediately get monetized, in a way that people aren't going to feel, oh, like, I'm sharing this information. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to turn it into something that retargets my ability to, search online for information? And so eventually I decided, look, I think the best way that we at least I can support folks is to create that space. So last July, almost exactly a year ago, I started thinking, what does that look like? And member number one of the Generosity Roundtable host network, Eric Guzman, actually kind of helped set me down this path, because we sat down. He is a development director at Together for Youth in upstate New York, and him and Megan Mayano, which is another member of the network. They were talking and basically saying, look, all these things sound great, but if you hit a certain threshold when it comes to a monetary amount, we're going to have to go talk to somebody. So I said, what does an affordable way to learn look like? What is an affordable, repeatable way to learn? And one of the things that I ultimately settled on is that I think that we can have a lot more enriched conversations about identity and generosity. I studied under the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy with Jen Shang. And that was an 8-week course that I learned kind of all the different basic foundations on the philanthropic psychology on why people give. And so I want to share a bit of where that kind of ultimately came to. Throw in the chat, by the way, because we're going to talk about the archetypes, because I think that's the biggest thing that I want to have coming out of for you today, if you're going to remember something, is that archetypes are a way to organize how people think about the world. And so this is my contribution. The reason we're doing it in a game is ultimately we need a bit of a safe space for those types of things to happen. People don't feel comfortable, and we're kind of seeing a bit about that. Jemima, right, is talking about frontline fundraising and consulting. And there's a bit of a conflict. And I do have a poll question also related to the gaming thing, because some people might even say, yeah, this all sounds good, but do I have to play a game in order to do this? And I would make an argument, this is actually the process that's going to help us better understand what these are. So let me make sure that I have this. I'm going to get this in the correct order. But I've been kind of playing around with these for a few years. So if what I'm going to actually throw in the chat is, I'd be interested if you've taken the Generosity Archetype quiz, whether you've been able to do that. Oh, thank you, love the confetti. And so this is kind of the heart. When you hear the words Generosity Spectrum, which is the company name, think of it like the Generosity Roundtable's my Super Mario Brothers, right? My Metroid, my Zelda, my Halo, if you're on that side of the video game thing, or Monopoly, Clue, right? Like, companies make these different types of things. And so ultimately the Generosity Roundtable is the first main idea that I've had that helps to teach people about this. And so TJ is an here. I'll even throw that up there too, right? Where it's like the story keeper, right? So these relate to how people think about the world. Pon, no surprise on the story keeper there, right? That's what I remember when we would hang out in Chicago. That was the thing that you taught me. And so the archetypes are interesting because I played around with this. I actually have 25 of these, but I said, let's start with 10. What are the core 10 ways to think about this? So I actually started with the archetypes before I had a game. So these are kind of that foundational way to think about why somebody is making a generous decision, not why they're giving money, not why they're volunteering, not why they're taking an action, but how they organize their thoughts around the world. A psychologist that I actually like to point to a lot, sociologist technically, is Daniel Kahneman, and he talks a lot about thinking fast and slow. That people have two systems of thinking. It's like you might see the builder, and your brain snaps to a certain thing, right? You see those words, you see those images, you see the different icons or the things put together, and our brains start to organize where this sits in our world. You prefer architect. Awesome. Funny on that one. We can get back to that one because it's also interesting when it comes to, do we want to kind of expand the world later on, and maybe architects are a different version of that, right? But for right now, evaluators and builders belong to what I called categories. For a while, I called them even terrains. Oh, I know you're playing with me. I called them terrains for a while. I had a very long process where this was going to be like a road trip game that got abandoned, I would say, by October very quickly. And so, so the 5 terrains, though, are benefits, right? People want to kind of see something and get the ROI. So that's like the evaluator and the builder are kind of part of that family of thinking. And it's a different way, right? An evaluator might be more systems and or numbers driven, where a builder is going to be more systems driven, right? A little bit of the play between an engineer and an architect. I know that because my wife is an engineer. Then we get into the second area, which is reputation. And so trust keepers and ambassadors are part of this. This is where kind of the connections between each other, those personal connections that might drive some sort of excitement or influence a decision, are going to be very, very important. And again, I think a lot of these are just very almost inward than outward, right? It's a little bit more trust keeper, is a little bit more intimate, and then that ambassador is a little bit more out in the public. And so a lot of these also connect to where somebody might be in exploring and understanding an organization, a cause, an idea, right? This is not relegated just to 501c3 nonprofits. Now, that's where we're going to focus our effort, because that's who I think needs this the most in terms of the peer learning. But I've played this with volunteers. I've played this with my kids. I've played this in corporate settings. And ultimately, I want to focus in on our lovely social good space first. So the reputation side is kind of starting to expand, right? It's almost like we start at the very the self, and a lot of people who take the quiz actually do get the evaluator and the builder, and then I think we start to then see other ones. Then especially the story keeper comes up, and this is where my collaboration with Julia Campbell is going to be very exciting, because she's running the Nonprofit Social Media Summit. We're going to be doing a nationwide game on November 18th. So all the hosts who are starting to join, and we can go international pun if you're not in Chicago at the time of that. And so all the folks, we're going to have folks play the game, but the story keeper kind of helps bring those narratives together, right? And so, yes, you get that kind of emotional sweet spot. But then you get my personal favorite in terms of, like, I love finding people who identify with the symbolist. The symbolist is the most fascinating one. You also might see that this is the design that we integrated on our homepage. And I could talk a bit about that, but this is kind of the main crux of what I want to get into. Is this is the heart of the game. And so the symbolist is kind of where you start seeing patterns. You look up in the sky, and kind of things start to make a lot more sense for you. Then you get into that local connection. This is the next family. So narrative is its own group, right? That drives so much of how we think about relationships with each other. Anybody watching the Odyssey, and I'd actually love to see who's watched the Odyssey, because I think it's almost like going to be a story and a movie that we're going to remember for a long time at this juncture on where are we going to go as a society when it comes to technology. And so I think it's a very important story. It's thousands of years old, right? That's a story that's carrying through. But sometimes people are like, yeah, that story is all well and good, but like, can I see you? Right. So this also gets back to how we're going to support the network, because no matter what, I have to think about teaching. My background is in curriculum design. I thought I was going to be a professor in labor history. And so what's interesting is all of these different archetypes. I need to almost think about a way that I can support somebody who identifies as this, right? So if somebody's a connector, if somebody is a symbolist, there should be a supporting asset for them to feel comfortable getting into the game themselves, because if they're not comfortable, the people who they're playing with might not be comfortable. So that is priority number one, is making this fun for everybody. So even the visuals, even the way that we're describing this, I did a lot of testing to even ensure that different types of people can look at this and see themselves in it. One of the books that I love is from the guy who did Scott Pilgrim. He wrote a book about comics. He actually talked about the more that you actually define the facial features of a person, right? Like you look at Batman, you look at Superman, Wonder Woman, for example, and you start to see, oh, that looks like that person, versus the more kind of nondescript a person's face is, a cartoon face in some ways, then you can start to identify it with it, and you can start to slide in. And that's actually where I started getting very inspired to look into role playing in particular, was how can I make sure that people can walk in the shoes of other folks? And so the advocate, the disruptor are also very popular archetypes for people to get in the quiz. Again, let me make sure I pin that so people can also find that. And so, again, we're only taking a little bit of time here to walk through this. This is one of the most important things. I've done a few presentations on this, but at the end of the day, I actually think it's a lot more important to live it. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on a little bit of how the game works. I'm by myself. I'm preparing to do things for dozens of people here at Bridge. We have materials that got created. There's the archetype cards. So these are things that people who are, even if they're not ready for the full system, you can actually grab just the cards and the booklets for $50 off of the site. I did a limited run to see what people are interested in, but we already have some folks who are looking at that too. And the reason that it's a role-playing game is that having a bit of distance is important. The most interesting thing that you should know about the evolution of this game is it was originally designed as a donor conversation game. I'm going to sit in the shoes of my donors. Here's the thing. All of you wanted to talk about your own problems, not just donor stuff. And so it evolved. It started to expand. It started to go, how can we make this something that we can streamline our conversations? And a lot of beautiful things started happening. It is hard to be a donor. It's also hard to be a nonprofit fundraiser or a volunteer or a board member or an advocate knocking on doors, right? Another member of our network, Rachel D'Souza, she's running for office right now, right? And so I was talking to her yesterday, and she's sitting there trying to make sure she talks to every single one of her neighbors in her district. And so there's so much inspiration coming that I wanted to ensure that people got connected with that. So once we started playing, right, and it was simple stuff. We started with very simple things where it's like, how do we organize the discussions here? So a character sheet is one of the first evolutions that came out. I started testing this as early as March and April. We had these going by at AFP Icon. And so what's fascinating is people can write these things down. They start to put down their name, their role, their title. But when I'm getting people into the game, I simply have them ask, they might take the quiz, right? Like, TJ, you're taking the quiz, and it's like, okay, I'm going to circle that thing there. But green flags, red flags, a lot of times I just encourage people to say, start with yourself. Don't think about a separate character, just make it for you. And so, one of the things that I want to encourage you is to check out the previous recordings of games. It's going to be a lot better than me, than just kind of monologuing. That's the one thing that, like, in this format, I don't exactly love is it's very lecture heavy. I love the fact that you're doing the chats and things like that. And I actually am going to launch a quick poll too that's related to let me see, where is the poll? Yeah, there it is. It's just like, how many of you consider yourselves a gamer? Because one of the interesting things that people I learned here is that ultimately, one, the fastest growing population of people who are quote unquote gamers is middle-aged women. And number two is that if you do the crossword, if you've ever played Clue, Shoots and Ladders with your kids, you're a gamer. Games are a natural part, just like generosity is part of our identity, play is part of our identity. And so being able to translate that into something that is actionable is the ultimate goal of the network. So the way that things work, if you haven't watched the game, is you might have some people sitting around a table. Ideally, even if they're playing as themselves, they're playing as an augmented version of themselves with an archetype, right? I'm not Tim. I'm Tim, the story keeper. And so that means that we're not having a staff meeting. And then what's fascinating is we created these tactics cards that I think are the most expendable version of it. So when all of you who've invested into the game, and I want to thank everybody who's done that so far, in terms of joining the network, we already have some folks who've signed up, and I am excited about where that's going to go. And so when you get it, one of the things you can ask yourself is like, what do I want to know more about how I think about the world? And you can use this to help hone your own decision making. There's a lot of research that actually amplifies that. Even if you don't consider yourself a gamer, being able to play with these concepts is going to make you a better storyteller, a better fundraiser, a better communicator, a better board member, a better volunteer, a better person, ideally. And so that's, I think, where I'm most excited because one of the things that I learned, and I see Bree joined also as well, we did a nice test back in February where it can be very validating to watch all these different people talk to each other. We had a table of 10 folks who were actually playing at one time. But the biggest thing that I learned is you need to prefab the scenarios for folks when they're first starting out. So next week. So let's talk about what's going to happen next week. First, I want to thank all the people that also helped bring things to life here. We've had a lot of support. We've had a lot of support from individuals. The average size gift has been $500 to this campaign to get us to this point. It's been a combination of philanthropy and traditional kind of sponsorships and stuff like that. Now we're going to open up the network and have people invest in themselves. You're not just buying an educational gaming system, you're buying into a peer learning network. So you get to play along people like Julia Campbell, and I'm going to end with her. She's got a nice little testimonial that I'm going to play for you so you can kind of see how she's thinking about it. And then we'll kind of send you on your way for today. But we have to prefab some scenarios. So I'm going to start with the board, right? How do you have some board conversations? I'm going to come out of Bridge with 3 different scenarios tested for recurring giving. And we also had a conversation with members of the network, Alicia Vermeer and David Woodley, about CRM usage. How does this translate into using your technology? Because here's the biggest thing. I worked for a technology company for 14 years. And I think there's a really good argument to make that the technology is actually narrowing our understanding and view on how we can think about things like fundraising, community engagement. It's boxing us in, kind of enshrining the idea of a donor versus actually helping you connect with people. So how can we break out of that? The technology is very cool. There's a lot of cool things you could do with automations and stuff like that. I'm seeing that on the for-profit side with Shopify. And that thing is wild. But at the end of the day, this is about connecting with people and understanding them better. And that's what I want to help us do. I want to be better at that too. The entire point of this is to get you more confident in your decision making around generosity, identity, and trust. That's it. That's it. And we're going to do that through the medium of having conversations. It's a roundtable conversation game. So when you focus in on the tactics, know one, play around with the different tactics cards, but that's the least important part of the game. That's the part that I expect people are going to add their own. That's why I give you blank cards in the game itself in a Sharpie. You can write your own. You just want to have a person talk about and have a bit of a tension between 2 to 3 main ideas. So something like when we did Mina Das's game with Megan Walsh on AI usage, it was how human do we need to be as a small shop? If we're small, should we start to automate more in order to reach more people, or should we stay more community centered with people? Watch the game to find out, but I think you can have a feeling of where we ended up landing. It's about people. And so, oh, love that, Pon. Thank you. I'm going to highlight that one. So I don't want you to take my word for it. And again, I just wanted to update people on where we're going. The moment we hit 150 people, and maybe sooner than that, I want to make this my life. And so I want this to be successful. And so thanks, Renee. And so just for $500, I want to be able to have people, one, not feel like it's subscription fatigue. So you can even read the rules online, just like D&D, and you're good to go. You're not, you don't, if you want to play around with, if you're like Renee, and this is the first time that you're actually coming into contact with stuff, you don't have to pay me anything. You don't. But for people who really love where this is going, right? Like, this stuff is affordable, but it still costs money and time. And so I want to be able to get it into people's hands. And look, it's hard to see here, but there's an emboss on the back of here, right? There's these little touches that elevate the quality. I already had tech people saying, why don't you lower the cost and just charge a subscription on a monthly basis? I don't think that's the way that we need to go. Because then my personal opinion is that then you feel like you're beholden to that monthly payment. And then once that turns off, is the learning still on? No, for me, it's like I'm sending you a box and that's it. And then we're going to be here for you. And if you like what we're doing, we're going to have more things that you can get down the line. I'm not a consultant. I'm a game company. And the way that we're going to learn and get better is through those conversations. I just happen to design a conversational game as the first thing. But if we want to know where it could go, well, I got to get, that's okay. So anybody who orders this week, I have to get back home. They're in my basement. We're going to have a packing party. You're going to get a video of all the friends and family from upstate New York coming and actually coming over and packing things and putting things. Oh, I know. I'm just being silly. And so I think what's so beautiful is that this needs to be a community-driven initiative. So I want to end, I'm going to play a video and then I'm going to send us on our way of like where I think this can go. So we're going to be a tiny bit over that half an hour mark. But I wanted to, we're hitting everything. So I want you to hear from Julia Campbell for a bit, and then I'll give you a little bit of preview where I think we can go. I also can grab one thing that can help with that. So check this out, and then I'll be right back.
Hi, I am Julia Campbell. I'm a nonprofit digital strategist. I host the podcast, and I am the founder of the nonprofit Social Media Summit. I'm excited that nonprofits are going to start having real conversations around tough issues that they might not have been able to broach in a more professional setting. So when you're doing, your performance review, or you're at a staff meeting or a board meeting, those are settings where it's really hard to delve into some of the challenges that you might be facing, or really dive into different challenges and obstacles that you're facing. So the Generosity Roundtable really helps organizations think from a different lens, think from a different perspective, and also really helps people get on the same page where they might not have been. So the conversations that I've had are incredible, or that I've also listened to and witnessed and hosted, have been really insightful. Something that I deal with a lot in my work, I call it couples counseling between marketing and fundraising. There's often so much friction and so many differing expectations, and they're often working in silos. And, the fundraising department or the person has their KPIs and the amount that they have to raise and, what ensures their success. And then the marketing people have their own set of standards and what they want to accomplish and how they want to use social media and digital tools and all of those communication avenues. So how can we really get them working together, and also just understanding that they are like focused on the same mission. They're focused on the same North Star. They're focused on the same success metrics at the end of the day. But it is hard when you don't have a culture that supports a lot of collaborative decision making. And I think the Generosity Roundtable is a space, it's almost like a safe space for this collaborative decision making that they would never be able to do in the office or in front of the boss. I'm always excited to meet with small nonprofits, mid-sized nonprofits, people that are in the trenches, because I do a lot of virtual learning and courses. I speak a lot. I have, a podcast, a blog, but I do sometimes feel isolated from the day-to-day goings on, other than the work I do with my clients. But I'm really interested in people that are trying to use social media or email marketing, digital tools to educate, to reach their audience, to tell their stories, and what are the struggles that they're having? What are they facing? What's going on right now in this, crazy world that we're in? And how can I want to learn from them. My tendency is to always teach. So my tendency is to come in and I'm a problem solver. I'm an eldest daughter. We fix things. That's what we do. We have a solution for everything. So I'm interested in listening and sort of participating where I can, but really listening to what the small nonprofits are facing right now. And that will definitely help inform my work and the things that I focus on. I'm the connector. Well, not surprisingly. I'm the connector. And I think that I wanted to be the ambassador. Mm-hmm. And I think that was my number 2. But yeah, the connector is really who I am. I love just making connections. I love collaborating. I love, like I said, seeing a problem and fixing it. If someone has a problem, I'm like, oh, I know a person that can fix that, or I know a solution, or I know an organization. So that, I think, is really spot on for me.
So Julia is part of our Guardians of the Game network. And so, yes, Julia is great. And so the Guardians of the Game are advisors to the work. They could be individual nonprofit practitioners. They could be ethicists. They could be technologists, storytellers like Julia. And that's ultimately part of the draw of what we're trying to do. We're going to play things together. We're going to learn together. I'm building processes and infrastructure so people can share in. So anytime we're doing these conference things, right? Not all of you can afford Bridge and go to Bridge, or make it feasible that you even want to go to Bridge, but you might be interested in the conversations happening here. Guess what? Everything that we do in that room tomorrow in my soon-to-be Lego Serious Play certified workshop format will be shared. Not everything. Things are going to have to stay in the room, but we're going to certify some of the decisions. You're going to see some of the characters that people built. And ultimately, I think we could start to think differently on how we learn together. Because if you could see others, you could watch videos, you can read, you can listen to podcasts. Maybe I'll do some fun things with puppets, and educate people on archetypes using that, right? We're supposed to have fun. That's the priority number 1. I think that we can get to cool things, right? I went to a live action role-playing conference in Sweden this past spring. This is a book that got produced at a conference. It's all theory on LARP. That's supposed to be fun for them. They're not getting paid for that. And so it's helped me think so much differently about problem solving. And so, yes, Gen Con is on my radar. I have a buddy that I also is there right now, I think. And so I'm going to kind of wrap things. I got the notice that we're a little bit over time. So I want to thank everybody for coming in here. We already had some orders come in. So thanks for getting hats and things like that, too. Every bit helps. But if you know somebody who can invest into the Generosity Roundtable network this week. We're going to keep things open through this week. We're not going to go through 500 boxes this week. Okay. So we're going to open it back up in also September and November again, too. But in the between that, there's also some philanthropy filling things, too. So we already had some commitments come in for people who just can't afford things. If that's a problem, we can find a corporate sponsor. You saw it. Look, let me show you all the folks who are interested in helping here. And so for the first 150 people, we're going to send you a branded board from Thai's Taekwondo. Here, let me show you what one of those looks like, right? So you're going to get this. But the faster we get to 150, that's stabilization for when I can say, okay, let's start to look at the words. Let's start to look at the rule set on the Wikipedia that we put together. And we're going to go from there. Right. And we're going to invest back in ourselves. That's the whole point of this. So I want to thank everybody who attended today. We're going to get this up online as well. And launch week is all through August, right? We're going to end things August 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to go to a pig roast. Usually we see a nice little bump. So thank you for everybody who's done that today. But if you want to chat with me or do it later in the week, it's open. It's open. And we're going to be open year round for learning, no matter what. We already have our August session queued up. I'm going to get some emails about that next week. And then we have our next nonprofit social media session connected, thanks to our partners at Bloomerang, in September. So we're going to have something every single month. And for those of you who have joined the host network, we're going to start to do some private only things. There's also a very special community partnership that I'm working on that's going to really take this to the next level. And all of this is just part of the plan. And you're part of the plan. So thank you. All right. I'll talk to you all soon. Let me know how we can help.